Hi everyone, welcome back to Shark Talk with Sharks for Kids. We came back last week after the holiday break with Shane Gross, who gave us a talk about marine conservation and photojournalism. So if you missed that, you can check it out on our YouTube channel, which is called Shark Kids. But for now, I'm really excited to welcome Carlee Jackson on today's webinar. Carlee is originally from Detroit in Michigan, but now lives in South Florida. She moved there to pursue a career in marine biology. She recently received her master's in marine biology from Nova Southeastern University, where she studied the effects of feed-in tourism on nurse sharks in Belize. Now she works on sea turtles, but I'm going to let her introduce herself fully because she'll do it better than I can. And yeah, so thank you so much for being here, Carlee. I'm really excited about your talk. Nurse sharks are very underrated, in my opinion, so I'm super excited to hear all about them. Yeah, the floor's all yours.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm really excited to talk to you guys about nurse sharks. They're like my favorite sharks, and I agree they're very underrated. We'll go over why they're underrated as well. But yeah, my name is Carlee Jackson. I am the Director of Communication of a organization called Minorities in Shark Science, where we're trying to uplift the diverse voices in shark science and encourage more diversity in shark science. Overall, I'm a shark and sea turtle conservationist. I work at a place called Gumbo Limbo Nature Center. It's in Boca Raton, Florida, and I do nesting surveys and also work in the sea turtle rehab hospital. So we get injured sea turtles and we rehabilitate them so they can be released out into the wild. And yeah, I got my master's last summer from Nova Southeastern University, and I'm going to talk a little bit about the research that I did there, and also about nurse sharks because they're really cool. So let's get started. So I'll just go over first, like just general overview of what I'm going to be talking about. So first I'll talk about nurse sharks. What are they? Why are they so underrated? Then I'll go into shark tourism, and then a little further into my research, which was the effects of tourism on nurse sharks. And then we'll kind of wrap it all up and talk about why is this even important. So first off, nurse sharks, the underrated sharks of the ocean. So nurse sharks, when you first see them, they are not very sharky looking sharks. So they don't have all those teeth showing and that like scary looking dorsal fin that's just like skimming across the water. They're pretty like, they're almost like little puppies. So their scientific name is Ginglimostoma serratum, which is a fun thing to say, I think. Ginglimostoma, gingly, kind of fun. And in general, they're pretty gentle and they're known to be a little bit lazy. So you'll always see them like resting or sitting under rocks or reefs, and that's kind of how they get a little bit underrated because they're very populous in different tropical areas. So they're found in tropical Atlantic Ocean, and they're pretty numerous in the shallow tropical waters. So usually if you're going snorkeling in places like where I live in Florida, you're bound to see a nurse shark. And that's kind of where they get their underrated status. And they're a benthic species of shark, so they're bottom dwelling. And like I said a little earlier, you'll often find them resting under reefs, kind of jamming themselves under these rocks. And I think it's kind of cute. But yeah, during the day, they just sleep and they just lazy around and they're just the chillest sharks. Also, nurse sharks, I think they're really cool because they have this really thick, tough skin. And it's because they always are jamming themselves up under rocks, and they're probably sharp corals and sharp rocks as well, but their thick skin really protects them from getting cut up by those rocks. So they're pretty cool. So another really cool thing about nurse sharks is that they don't have to keep swimming in order to breathe. So I'm sure a lot of people have heard like all sharks need to keep swimming in order to breathe. If the shark stops swimming, the shark's gonna just like sink to the bottom and die because it can't breathe. Well, that's not the case for all sharks. So nurse sharks have this really cool thing called buccal pumping, and there are a couple other there are some other species of sharks that also do this, but this allows them to literally use their cheek muscles to pull in water through their mouths. So sharks keep swimming because other species of sharks, if they stop swimming, they can't breathe because they won't be able to pull water through their mouths in order to get the water over their gills so they can breathe. But nurse sharks literally suck in the water to pull the water over their gills, so they don't have to keep swimming. And there's this short little video that shows a nurse shark just sitting in the sand. You can see the water going over its gills as it's using that buccal pumping. So you can see like the gills are moving, and that is because it is literally just sucking the water in through its mouth and passing it over its gills. So, and then also in this little video here, you can see that they use that suction also to feed. So as it goes again, you can see the shark literally kind of slurp up a piece of fish right there in the front. So nurse sharks, they feed on crustaceans, mollusks, small fish, things that usually have like hard, tough shells, hard, tough like exteriors, and they'll suck it in like a vacuum and then use their jaws to just completely crush that shell apart so they can eat all of the good parts on the inside of the shell. So I think they're pretty cool. And they make like this really weird like suction noise when they are doing that. It's really loud and it kind of sounds like a clapping suction noise. It's look up some videos of nurse sharks eating and you'll know what I mean. So nurse sharks, since they're not those really sharky sharks that people are like immediately like nervous in the water with, they're pretty chill. They are very popular in shark tourism. So shark tourism, think of it as having fun with sharks in the wild. So usually snorkeling, diving, or swimming with sharks, that's in the category of shark tourism. So there's another part of shark tourism called provisioning. So provisioning shark tourism is when you're feeding to attract the sharks to your boat or to your area. And this is really common in different types of wildlife tourism because a lot of species are, well, most animals are scared of humans. So you get in the water, you usually, if you're just like out in the ocean snorkeling and you don't see a shark, it's usually because that shark knows you're in the area and it's like, I don't want to see this alien. I'm just going to go the other way. So you usually need some incentive or just like something that'll attract them to the area. And since food is such an important resource to sharks, they need food to live. They live to eat, literally. So they're going to need some like a little incentive to come to the area. So that's where provisioning comes in. And yeah, and shark tourism really is growing in popularity because the media likes to show that sharks are these mindless killing machines and all they're doing is eating, and if they're gonna go right for you as soon as you get in the water. And a lot of people it's like it's so cool to go diving with sharks because there's these dangerous animals, and it's just really increasing in popularity over the years. So I'm going to talk now about my own research that I did for my master's. So my research focused on the effects of provisioning tourism on nurse sharks in a place called Keekulker. So there's an island about 20 miles off the coast of Belize called Keekulker. It's a small, cute little 5-mile island, but it is just so like rich in biodiversity and just coral reefs. And Belize has the largest living barrier reef in the world, but the second largest overall just barrier reef. So it's a really, really cool place, and there's a lot of life there. So the area that I focus my research on is called Shark Ray Village. So this area, they provision nurse sharks and southern stingrays, like you see right here. So boats go in that area and they tie off to one of the buoys there, and they literally just throw food in the water, and the nurse sharks just come up, they swim around the boat, they eat the food, and tourists are able to get in the water and take pictures with them, swim around with them. So it's a really fun experience for the tourists. Um, and yeah, Shark Ray Village, if you can see in this picture, you can see it's a very shallow water habitat. So it's made of seagrass. The barrier reef is like maybe 50 meters east of where that area is. And yeah, it's a really cool small little place. And this is where I focus my research. So with my research, I'm going to go through first kind of the scientific method and how you approach research and how most scientists kind of what process they go through as they're going through their research. So first off, I ask a question. So I see something happening and I'm asking, wow, I wonder how this is affecting the nurse sharks. Like, is it affecting it in this way? And then from that question, you develop a hypothesis. So think of it as an educated guess. So I think that this is going to happen. All right. And then after your hypothesis, you do your experiment to collect your data to kind of figure out like, all right, I want to answer this question and trying to prove my hypothesis or even see if my hypothesis is disproven. So, and then after that, you usually get an answer, and sometimes your conclusion is just your hypothesis was wrong or it was right. So sometimes in science, you're not always right. And that's the fun part of science, I think. So for my personal research, my question, I actually asked a couple of different questions, but I'm going to focus on one question that I asked. So I asked, are nurse sharks attracted to the tour boats in the area? So from that, I hypothesized that there's going to be a different number of nurse sharks when there are boats in the area compared to when there are no boats. So basically, when there are boats in the area, there's going to be maybe there'll be a lot of nurse sharks, and then when there are no boats in the area, all the nurse sharks are probably going to disappear. So that's what I guessed. So for my experiment, I actually set up a GoPro in Shark Ray Village. So right in the middle of Shark Ray Village, I put up a GoPro. Some scientists put like food or bait boxes around their cameras, but since I was in an area where the sharks were fed, I didn't want them to completely destroy my camera. So we did not put food there, but we did see a lot of sharks still. So from that GoPro footage, I actually counted sharks. So it was fun. I just got to sit there and count sharks on my screen. So this method is called the max in. So this picture right here kind of shows you one frame of the videos that I was watching. And in that one frame, that was the most amount of sharks that I could count. So that is where we get the term max in. And I compared that to when there were boats and to when there were no boats. And remember, again, I'm trying to see if the nurse sharks are attracted to the boats. And I'm using this to kind of figure out if there's a correlation or if it's, showing an attraction. All right, so from that experiment and from my data, after analyzing all the data and just going through lots of scientific, what is it called, statistics, I saw that there was evidence of boat attraction. So from this graph, it might look a little scary to some people, but I'm going to break it down for you. So on this part of the graph, I have the average maximum number of sharks that I could count. And these are the different times that I was counting sharks and just comparing them between different times that the boats were there. So I compared them between when the boats were there and actually feeding the sharks. And then again, when the boats were there, but not feeding the sharks. And then one last time when there were just no boats. So you can already see between these two activities, we'll call them, So with the boats feeding and not feeding, the boats were still in the area. So I counted an average of more sharks when there were boats in the area compared to when there was no boats in the area. So just from this graph, we can see there were more sharks when there were boats and a whole lot less sharks when there were no boats in the area. All right, so yeah, once again, just more sharks when there are boats present. And this is a picture of, there were probably an average of like 30 nurse sharks there at a time. And it's pretty amazing, even though sharks are, or nurse sharks are pretty chill and like, you see a nurse shark, you're like, oh, it's cute. But like seeing like 30 nurse sharks at one time is just like insane. It's like, it's a lot of sharks. And it just is like, oh my gosh. And they're a little clumsy sometimes, so it's just fun watching them just like run into each other or just go over each other. So it's pretty cool. But yeah, so from this, we can kind of see that the boats equal a dinner bell for these sharks. So the sharks hear the boat engine and they would just immediately come into the area. And I have a cool video after this slide that kind of shows that as well. But you can kind of see in this video right here that all the sharks were at a boat. And I assume that that boat either stopped feeding or there was another boat coming into the area and they said, ooh, let's go see what this boat has. So they were kind of just picking and choosing their little food, and just, you can really tell that they were attracted to those boats because they knew that the boat probably was going to have food for them. So yeah, you can see this boat is going by and these nurse sharks are like little puppies just following the boat. This is like my favorite video from my from my research. But yeah, so the nurse sharks and sharks in general, when they're looking for prey items, they're using different senses. And specifically with nurse sharks, they have these tiny little eyes. So they don't really use their eyes to find their prey. They rely mostly on their electroreception that all sharks have. They can sense those bioelectric fields. And they also use auditory cues. So they hear their prey as well. And they feel vibrations as well. They use their that lateral line. So it kind of makes sense that they're so attracted to the sound of that of the boat engine, because that's what they're using to find their prey. And the boat is giving off all of these signals saying, hey, like this might be prey, like we have food. And since the boats are also feeding them, it literally is kind of just going hand in hand with how they're finding their food. So unfortunately, I did find that there were consequences to their attraction to the boat. So like I said earlier, they're very attracted to the sound of that boat engine. So the sound is loudest back behind the boat where the engine and the propellers are. So you can always already see just how close these sharks are to the boat propeller right here. And that's not very good for them. So a lot of the sharks that we saw there had propeller marks. These are marks from the propeller and notches on their fins. We saw some sharks that had injuries to their mid body, so like cuts down here and just cuts all along their fins. And this was from being so attracted to that boat engine, and they would really just be way too close to those propellers. And since these animals are just very reliant on food, it kind of just sharks, they heal really fast for one, but also it's just they keep going because they know they're going to get food even though they're getting injured. But yeah, so this is not the best thing for these guys, and this was a consequence that I saw to how attracted they were to these tour boats. So just, I always get this question, is tourism good or is tourism bad? And I talked about all these consequences to the nurse sharks and how they can get injured just from being attracted to these boats. But really the overall answer is that it depends on the management. So you can have good management of a tourism area, make it safer for animals and even safer for the environment. because there's some tourism that involves coral reefs. And if you're not really managing your tourists very well, your tourists can kick some of the coral, and it can kill the coral later on, cause them to bleach. And also, just in regards to the nurse sharks getting hit by the propellers, there's a way that you can manage the area in order to make it safer for them. So you can tell all the boats to put propeller guards on their boats to make sure that if a shark does get hit by the propeller, it's not going to cut them. And also they could change which side of the boat that they're feeding on, because all of the tour guides would feed on one side of the boat and it would be kind of close to the propellers. So maybe if they changed which side of the boat they fed on, it would make it less easy for the sharks to get hit by the boat propellers. And yeah, and if you have bad management, it can be very harmful to the environment and the animals. If you just let your tourists do whatever they want, like touch the sharks, jump on the back of the sharks or something, which I did see while we were in Belize, surprisingly. And if you just don't watch your tourists and let them kick their fins all over the coral, then yeah, it's going to be pretty bad for the environment. And that's when tourism is bad. But my overall answer is always that it really just depends on the management. So we're going to wrap this up by saying, why do we even care? Why do we care about tourism and sharks, and like how does this even go hand in hand? So first off, there's just an overall decline in biodiversity, and that's just another way of saying that we're losing a lot of different species of shark, or just species of animals all over the world. And this is mainly due to humans causing climate change, hunting, overfishing, or just overhunting, and just overall, we're just seeing a decline in a lot of our species. And then more specifically, we're seeing a decline in global shark populations. So there's been studies that are coming out saying that we are not seeing as many sharks in our reefs as we used to. So shark populations are going down. And like I said, this is due to a lot of human disturbances. So overfishing, I lost my thought. Overfishing is a big one, but overfishing, climate change, and just their environment degrading. So a lot of the corals bleaching, that's where a lot of sharks live, is in coral reefs. But if the coral reefs aren't healthy, it's not giving them healthy food sources. So that doesn't do well for those populations. So really, sharks are very important for our oceans, and a lot of sharks are either at the top of the food chain or kind of in the middle of the food chain of where they are, depending on the size and species of sharks. But if you remove sharks from our ocean, then our oceans are just going to rapidly decline in health. So a healthy ocean means that there's healthy shark populations there. Sharks kind of help clean up the ocean as well. So they'll eat the sick and dying animals and kind of prevent the spread of diseases, and they just really help clean up our oceans. And overall, it's important to understand how humans are interacting with sharks. So that's why studies like mine are very important. Since humans are kind of the number one reason why global shark populations are declining, it's just really essential for us to figure out, all right, how are we interacting with these animals? Like, why is this happening? And really, activities like tourism, we need to know how this is affecting shark populations. And if it's, making the populations, if it's hurting the populations, then we need to do something about it. And if it's kind of neutral on the populations, then it's still important for us to understand that relationship. So yeah, and with that, I know it was a little short, but I'll take questions and stuff now. So
Awesome. Thank you so much, Carlee. That was a great talk. I'm very jealous that you went to Belize. It's always been on my bucket list.
yeah,
and I
cool
love
place.
that video of all the nurse sharks following the boat. That's
Oh my
so
gosh, we can go back to that because it's just amazing.
Oh, look at them. They're like puppies.
Exactly. They're just trailing behind. It's
So we've got some questions coming in, and if anyone has any questions for Carlee, please drop them in the Q&A box, which is at the bottom of your screen. We've got a few general questions about sharks to start with. Can sharks really smell blood from a mile away?
So I love that question because it kind of goes into the whole like sharks are these crazy eating machines, and you cut yourself, they're coming, like they're coming for you in the water. um, but basically, for sharks to be able to smell something, it's the same with us. Those particles have to enter our nose, and we have to be able to literally smell them. And I'm not like an expert on shark physiology or anything like that, but um, they cannot smell like a drop of blood like miles away or anything. So, but they do have a very keen sense of smell, and they use a lot of different sensory mechanisms in like with their smell to kind of figure out where a prey item is. But yeah, that is my simple answer because that's all I know on that.
Yeah, awesome. And that kind of leads us, what you were saying, to our next question, which is, are sharks really dangerous?
Yeah, so sharks are, I always say, like, if you're in the wild with a wild animal, animals are unpredictable. So sharks can be dangerous if you are provoking them because they have teeth. And just like any other animal or any other human, if you mess with something and you don't like it, they're probably going to retaliate in some way. But overall, if you're just in the water with sharks, sharks are sometimes pretty curious animals. They'll like come up and be like, what are you doing? Like, what are you, alien? And then they'll just swim away. But I would say that it really, sharks can be dangerous because they're wild animals, they have teeth, and they're unpredictable. But in the grand scheme of things, it is not unsafe to just be in the ocean and there be sharks around.
Yeah.
So, sorry, there are flies flying in my face.
Yeah, it's like any wild animal. You have to be respectful. You wouldn't walk up to a lion to pet it, so don't do
Exactly.
it to a shark. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. Um, awesome. So we've got some great questions coming through now. One of them is a great one. Someone asks, what other types of sharks use buccal pumps?
Yes, so there are other benthic sharks that use it as well. So like your angel sharks and like what is it called? Like the epaulet shark, those really cute ones. A lot of the sharks that are on the Pacific that lay on the bottom, they use buccal pumping. And there's also some sharks like the lemon shark. They also use buccal pumping. They can switch between buccal pumping and ram ventilation is the other type of breathing. So when you have to swim and open your mouth in order to get water through your gills, they can do that because sometimes they'll sit at the bottom and rest as well. And I also heard that tiger sharks can buccal pump randomly if they need to. And and some sharks, they can do it at a young age, and then they kind of just switch to just doing ram ventilation at an older age. So
Yeah,
yes,
we often see videos of small is it black tip reef sharks that can do it as
mm-hmm.
well? Yeah.
Yes.
And they all like hug each other and then they're all
Mm-hmm.
just opening and closing their mouth.
Yes, so cute.
All right. So next one we have is from La Scuola. Ask, can nurse sharks have relationships with humans? So has there ever been a case of a shark becoming friend with a human, for example?
So I know of nurse sharks in captivity that do that. So there's someone that I know who works at a place in the Keys. I can't remember the name. I think Theater of the Sea or something. But they have nurse sharks there in captivity, and those are sharks that probably were given to them or they just couldn't go back in the wild. And they actually do form like little relationships with their sharks, but it's because that's over years, and they also train the sharks. So just like any animal, usually if you train it, especially with food rewards, you can develop some type of relationship with the animal. But I would say in the wild, like sharks usually aren't like, oh my gosh, let's be buddies. Like,
Yeah.
but yeah, I'd say that happens more in captivity
Yeah.
than it would in the wild.
Great. Awesome. So, our next question is from Emma, and she asks, have you ever pet a shark before?
Yeah, so I've pet a shark in like aquariums and like touch tanks and stuff when I was younger. But when I'm out swimming in the wild, I do my best to put my hands behind my back because it's important not to touch wildlife. Kind of like we said earlier, we wouldn't go up to a lion and pet it. So it's just, and also for me, it's kind of a respect. Like if someone just came up to you and just started petting you on the head, would you like that? Even though they're animals, I would think that it's probably not like the best thing for them. But yeah, I try not to pet sharks in the wild, but sharks in like captivity or at aquariums, they're used to it and like that's what they're there for. So
That's right. And we don't know what we might be doing to an animal if we touch it in the wild. We could be giving it diseases, or we just don't understand and we don't know, so it's just best to not do it at all. Yeah.
exactly.
Great. So now we have some questions a little bit about your career. How long have you known that you wanted to work and take care of sharks, and why did you choose to go
I'm sorry if my lights are like
into
they're
that
being
work?
weird.
Oh, that's fine.
Um, yeah, so I like you said a little earlier, I grew up in Detroit, Michigan, so I was far away from the ocean. But for me, I read a book on sharks. Literally the book was just called Sharks. And I read it and I was just immediately hooked on the ocean and on sharks. So that's kind of what got me into marine science. And then it kind of just stuck throughout my whole life. And I decided, like, yeah, I want to go to school for marine biology and came to Florida because I said I needed to be next to the ocean in order to study marine science. But yeah, and then from there, I just started. I didn't really start in marine science until a little bit later in my college career, but yeah, that's kind of how I got into it.
Fantastic. And maybe since we're on the topic, do you have any advice for anyone watching who would like to go into working with sharks or in marine science?
Yeah, so I would say definitely look for schools that have marine biology programs, and in those programs, like make sure they have a shark research, at least like some professors that do shark research, and um, just try to volunteer in different labs. And like also I say keep an open mind because a lot of people, they're like, all right, I only want to do sharks, that's it. And like here's me who's doing sharks and sea turtles. So so yeah, just try a lot of different things and see what you like. And um if you are like starting to get into college and everything, like don't be scared of your professors. That's a big thing. They're just normal humans. They're usually nice and chill. So yeah.
Great. And on that subject, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you do now with sea turtles? I'm sure people would love to hear about turtles as well.
Yeah, so sea turtles are my second love. Sharks are my first. But I got a job working with them in Boca Raton, and it was like my first marine science related job. And I actually started as an educator and then was promoted to sea turtle specialist. So what I do here is help monitor the beaches for nesting activities. So sea turtle nesting season is from March to October, and so we're getting pretty close. But yeah, so we get different species here like loggerhead, green sea turtles, and leatherback sea turtles. And um, I mark the nest on the beach because they are endangered, and because they're endangered, they're federally protected and their nests are protected. So we have to protect them from the public. I also work in our sea turtle rehab department. So we have a hospital where we'll receive sick and injured sea turtles, and we will do our best to rehabilitate them, administering medications. We have a vet that comes on site, and just we're taking care of these turtles until they can be released, hopefully released back out into the wild. So it's a pretty fun job.
Yeah.
Honestly, I will say I've been bit by a sea turtle more times than I've even come close to being bit by a shark. So sea turtles are a little gnarly.
That sounds like such a fun job, though. I'm very jealous. We've got a few more questions. Do you still have time to answer them?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Great. So we've got some more questions coming through from La Scuola, who are asking us, why are nurse sharks called nurse sharks?
Yeah, so there's like a lot of debate of why they're called nurse sharks. One is because when they make that suction noise, it sounds like they're nursing, I guess. I was like, okay. And then another, I can't remember, but it goes into like a specific translation of what they used to be called. I can't remember what they used to be called, but it literally translated into nurse shark. But yeah, I like to think that it's probably because of the noise that they make when they're sucking up food.
Yeah, when they come to the surface, sometimes you can hear the suction of the shark at the mouth. It's pretty funny and cute.
Yeah,
again.
It's cute. Yeah.
Can they swim in brackish water, or are they purely seawater based?
Nurse sharks, they swim in brackish water. When they're younger, they like to stay in the mangroves. So like when they're first born, like just a tiny little baby shark, they stay in the mangrove areas. And sometimes that water, depending on where you are geographically, can be a little brackish because there's usually fresh water flowing in from some source. But for the most part, nurse sharks are strictly sea sharks.
Great. And if anyone has never seen a baby nurse shark before, look it up because they are adorable. And
the cutest thing ever.
They are very closely related to whale sharks, aren't they?
Yes,
and
they are.
You can really see that when they're babies with all their little polka dots all over them.
Yes, they've got spots all over them. Oh, they're so cute.
Can nurse sharks, and this is a great question, maybe you can define what it is, can they use parthenogenesis to have babies?
That word is, do you remember what that word means?
So it's when female sharks will give birth to babies without actually having mated with males.
Okay. Yes. Okay. It's coming to me. So I do know that I'm pretty sure a lot of species of sharks can hold on to, like when the male inserts like the sperm to make the little babies, they can hold on to that sperm for a while. And they can, later down the line be like, oh, like we're going to use this to make a little baby or multiple babies. So I do know that I'm not sure if they can just do that without a male. But I do know they can hold on to sperm for a good amount of time and use it to fertilize different eggs. And the eggs can actually be from like different fathers. Like they can birth one little, birth a couple of pups, and each pup can have like a different father, which is kind of crazy to me. A little scandalous, but
yeah. Exactly. I know that zebra sharks can do it because it was found a few years back where a female shark was on her own in a tank in an aquarium and hadn't been in a presence of a male shark for a very long time, and gave birth to some babies. But I don't know if nurse sharks do it.
Yep, great question. I can look that up though. That's my list of things to research later.
Oh, we've still got so many questions coming through.
All
so
good.
let's see.
I got time.
Freya asks, has COVID had an impact on the tourism in Shark Ray Village? And if so, has this made a difference on the number of nurse sharks who seem to be in the area due to less boats?
Yeah, so I haven't been back to Shark Ray Village since I went there in 2019. I think it's September of 2019. And I've been trying to contact people there about like what's going on in Shark Ray Village, because like that was the first thing I thought of. I was like, oh, they completely shut down the country. What are these sharks doing? So I still have to like, I'm still waiting to hear back from some of them, but I did hear that when one of my tour guide friends, he went out there probably a couple months ago, and he said it was very few number of sharks. So I'm interested to see like if those sharks maybe went somewhere else to look for food, or if they just kind of said, you know what, forget this place, we're going to just leave and never come back. I don't know. So yeah, I'm just as interested as you are. I would love to know what these sharks are doing during COVID, because I'm not sure if they've started any tourism back. I still need to check with the manager there, but yeah, I'm also interested. I'm sorry I don't have a more definite answer, but
We might not know the answers to these questions until long after tourism sort of resumes, right? Because it will
exactly.
take some
Yeah.
time to see the effects of these things.
Yeah.
But that's an awesome question, Freya. Maybe you can research that one day as well.
Yeah.
That actually leads me to another question that I had is for the people watching, some of them might end up being tourists and going to see sharks or other animals in the wild. Do you have any advice for anyone watching on what to look out for or how to choose the right place to go and see sharks or the right tourism company to use?
Yeah, so I would always try to go for companies that specifically say that they are eco-friendly. So eco-friendly tours, there's a lot of those in Belize. So they specifically they don't feed the sharks. They don't. They make sure that I think they're very strict on tourists that snorkel in like coral areas. They make sure that you guys aren't like kicking corals or anything. They also have like different types, like if they provide snacks or anything for you guys, they make sure that it's all eco-friendly packaging, and like if it accidentally flies into the water, it's not going to, I don't know, like be entangled around a sea turtle or something. But basically, these types of tour guides practice, they have certain practices that make sure that they're having as little impact on the environment around them as possible. So I would say that, and like make sure that, you know, they are very strict on like animal touching. There's definitely some companies that will go out and they'll just like grab sharks and like have you like pet it or something. I would say stay away from those those types of tour companies. But yeah, always look for companies that say, sometimes they'll have like a little stamp that says eco-friendly, and you can probably reach out to the tour guide company just to ask what their eco-friendly practices are.
That's right. And it's about making sure that we have as little impact as possible
Mhm.
on the environment. And, you know, if people came into your house and came to visit your house, you wouldn't want them breaking your glasses or anything like that.
Exactly.
So we don't do it to
Rude.
each other either. Great. Keelan asks, what does shark skin actually feel like? And what do these shark skin feel like? Because a lot of people might know that it kind of, their skin is entirely covered in teeth called dermal denticles. Is it the same for nurse sharks?
Yeah, so nurse sharks also have dermal denticles, just like all sharks. So it's literally teeth skin. So if it wasn't enough, if they had a mouthful of teeth, they've got literally just a body covered in teeth. And nurse sharks, they have the skin usually feels like sandpaper. So if you rub a shark, I tag sharks as well. So I commonly feel how sharks skin feels like. If you rub from the nose to the tail, it's pretty smooth. But if you rub from the tail to the head, you'll feel a lot of resistance, and that's when it'll start feeling like sandpaper. And specifically with nurse sharks, I think theirs feels like sandpaper the most because they're just very hardy sharks. So, like I said, they live in reefs and like rocky areas, so they need thick, tough skin to make sure they're not getting cut by those rocks. And their skin is just really, really tough. And it's not necessarily sharp, but it is definitely, it's very sandpaper like, and you can just feel how tough and thick the skin is.
Yeah, that's right. And if you compare the skin of a nurse shark and that of a mako shark, for example, you can really see the difference between, because on mako sharks it looks exactly like teeth, and I always say that it's because they have to slice through the water to go really
Yeah.
fast. Whereas nurse sharks don't actually want to move that fast, but they do want to have that tough skin to be able to resist the rocks. So it actually looks, when you look under a microscope, it actually looks really like sand itself, the skin of nurse sharks. It's really pretty.
And their dermal denticles, I think, are a little wider based than most sharks that are like built for speed, and their sharks are built for the opposite. But
Yeah.
their dermal denticles are very wide and not as like pointed, like you were saying with the mako sharks. It needs to slice through the water. Theirs is just, wide and for slow moving.
Awesome. So we'll finish with just a couple more questions. Emma and Kaylee have two very similar questions. It's, what's your favorite type of shark? And also, what's your favorite animal?
Yes. Well, my favorite animal, 100%, is sharks. And my favorite, I have two favorite types of sharks. I love nurse sharks. I love nurse sharks, and I also really enjoy mako sharks. It's just funny that you talked about mako sharks, but I was a swimmer. I swam all the way through college, and like mako sharks, I feel like I connect with them because they swim so fast, and I would try to be like a mako shark. But mako sharks, I just think they're really cool, and they're like warm blooded, which is just absolutely amazing to me.
That's right.
They can warm their muscles with their blood, and that's how they can swim so fast. So they're really cool.
Yeah, they are. They're super cool. Very good. And my last question for you is there, has there been a moment in your life that you've like, what's been your favorite shark or marine moment in your life?
Yes. So I think back on when I was doing this research, and we were about to start one of the surveys in the Sharkray Village, and there were like 50 tourists in the water. It was like chaos. But then just my boat captain, he just is waving us over, and he's like, "There's a hammerhead! There's a hammerhead!" And I was like, "What?" So of course I swim directly to where he's pointing instead of swimming away. But we swim towards wherever he was pointing, and just like I was by myself trying to get to my group of volunteers who were helping me, and the shark kind of cut me off a little. So there was just this great hammerhead shark, absolutely beautiful, maybe around like 8 to 9 feet long, about 2 meters, 2.5 meters, and she just was cruising by, and it was abnormal for that area because key culture, great hammerheads are not protected. So they were kind of fished to extinction in that area. But it was like, this great hammerhead is here. And we were just like, oh my gosh, like this is amazing. And it was my first time in the water with like a shark that big and like a shark that sharky looking that wasn't a nurse shark. And
Hmm.
I just remember feeling like a shrimp, and also just feeling like you just kind of get a whole lot more respect for the animals because it's such a large, like fearsome looking animal. But really all she was doing, she just circled us, kind of checked us out, like, what are y'all doing? And then she swam away. So it was really cool. And then later I was able to actually swim with like big hammerheads in Bimini, and that was amazing. So but I'll always go back to that time in my study area
Mm.
because there were just a bunch of little nurse sharks around, and all of a sudden this hammerhead in like 6 feet of water. It was
Yeah.
just crazy.
Yeah, hammerheads, great hammerheads are just stunning, stunning animals. And
Absolutely beautiful.
yeah, I've only seen one, ever seen one, and it's got to be one of my top experiences as well. Well, Carlee, thank you so, so much for joining us today and giving your shark talk. Is there anywhere that people can keep in touch with you, or maybe ask you the questions that they haven't asked yet? Is there any of your work that they can follow?
Yes, I should have put a slide with all my socials and everything. I can write it in the chat maybe, or the
Oh,
Q&A.
yeah, the Q&A probably.
Okay, yeah, I'll write it. But the let's see, type something. So my Instagram is at Carlee MJ _. So I'm just going to put that as answer somewhere. And my Twitter is the same. And that's a good place to reach me if you, need any, if you have any questions or I want to know more about my work. And then also feel free to email me as well. I feel like I'm not putting this in the.
Oh,
right
I might
place.
just get you to put it in the chat.
Okay.
See. Yeah, it should work now. So
I'm gonna just stop my screen. Okay, there we go. All right, so Instagram and Twitter are at Carlee MJ _. And then if you guys want to email me, that is also fine. It is right there, cjax90@fau.edu. And also check out my organization, Minorities in Shark Science. Our website is misselasmo.org. We have a lot of cool stuff coming up, so definitely stay tuned for that.
yeah, and they've got some great shark facts on their Instagram and their Twitter. So go over and check it out. And if you want to rewatch this talk, you'll be able to watch it on YouTube in the next couple of days. So the YouTube channel is called Shark Kids. Feel free to visit our website as well, where you'll find links to all of the previous webinars, and you'll find lots more resources. And we'll also see you all next week for a talk by Alana Vellacott, who will be talking about coral reefs and growing corals for the future. That will be on Tuesday at 1 p.m. EST and 6 p.m. GMT. So that's it from us. Thank you so much, Carlee, for joining us, and thank you everyone for watching and for joining in every single time. Yeah, great.
Thank you for having me. Had fun.